Well, hello, I'm Josh and I'm back once again with another film to tell you about. And today I'm going to be talking about Frank Borzage's 1948 film, Moonrise. So Moonrise is a Southern Gothic film noir that follows a young man named Danny who has been living under the shadow of his father, who was accused of murder and hanged when Danny was young. Because of this, he has been picked on by several of his peers his entire life, and in an attempt to stand up for himself, he accidentally kills one of his bullies. So the film is about Danny dealing with this guilt and deciding whether or not he can turn himself in. So as I said, this film was directed by Frank Borzage, who nowadays is not really well known. Even for those who enjoy classic films, he is still relatively obscure, which I find kind of a shame, especially considering he was actually the first person to receive the Best Director Academy Award. The first time he won, it was for his film Seventh Heaven, and then a few years later he actually won the same award again for his film Bad Girl. And even before becoming a director, he was also a pretty successful silent film actor, appearing in over 100 films. So needless to say, he was not at all obscure in his day. But what's interesting is he was actually working pretty consistently up until the release of this film. From what I gathered, several of his films from this period of his career were not very successful, and I believe Moonrise was one of the only critically praised films of this period. So sadly, Borzage would only make a handful more films until his death in 1962. I don't believe the film did very well at the time, but it's since gained a bit of a cult following. One of my favorite aspects of Moonrise is just how incredible it looks. It actually has some very notable similarities to the film Night of the Hunter. They both create this dreamlike feeling while maintaining this Southern Gothic kind of film noir look. Moonrise of course predates Night of the Hunter by a few years, so I wonder if Charles Laughton ever used this film as kind of a point of reference. But regardless, this film looks quite different from the usual studio film that was being made at the time. And the camera work, though maybe not as groundbreaking as something like Citizen Kane, is still incredibly inventive and really stands out from a lot of the films that were being released in the late 40s. Alright, so now for the cast, and I'll say this has a pretty good one. Dane Clark is very convincing as this conflicted, guilt-ridden person. He was never really a big star, so you might not have heard of him, but as I said, he really does a great job in this. I also saw him somewhat recently in an old war film called Destination Tokyo. He was pretty good in that, and I think he's also in the film The Glass Key, so he was definitely an actor that was around, but never really gained that star status that a lot of the other actors he was working with would get. Still, as I said, I think he's really good in this. He almost resembles something like a young Marlon Brando or James Dean in a way. And actress Gail Russel plays Gilly Johnson, who is Danny's love interest in this film. And she was also in another great film that I talked about a couple years ago actually. It was called The Uninvited. And if you check that out, I go a little more in depth into who she was in that review, but she does a great job in this too. And another interesting cast member, Harry Morgan, is also in this. You probably remember him from a show like MASH, or I believe he was also in Dragnet, but he gives a great, really unique performance in this. The character he plays is Danny's friend, who is actually mute, so he actually does a really powerful job as this role without even talking. In another surprising cameo, the bully that he actually kills at the beginning is played by none other than Lloyd Bridges. And you might remember he actually made an even briefer cameo in a film I talked about a couple months ago, Here Comes Mr. Jordan. But aside from them, a couple other actors who I want to shout out for their really incredible performances. Rex Ingram as Mose. And his scenes always just really stick out to me. He does a phenomenal job in this film. As well as Ethel Barrymore, who plays Danny's grandma. So yeah, just a wonderful cast with some pretty recognizable names in there as well. So if you'd like to watch Moonrise, it's available to rent or buy from all the usual streaming sites. I think I even saw it on YouTube, so you might even be able to catch it on there if you want. Or if you want to be like me, you can pick it up physically from the Criterion Collection. It has this great original cover art, as you can see, along with a new 4K restoration. And I've of course been playing clips from that throughout this video, so you've kind of gotten an idea of how incredible this film looks. I believe there's only one bonus feature with this, which might be a little bit of a drawback for a Criterion. They're usually filled with bonus features, but still I'd say it's definitely worth picking up if you're interested. Alright. So for my question today, I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite dreamlike films? Like I said, this film is relatively grounded in terms of plot, but it adds this very dreamlike quality to everything else, from the lighting to the performances. Everything the characters feel seem to be reflected and expressed through their environment. So I'm wondering, what are some of your favorite films that do this? Go ahead and put your favorites in the comment section down below and start discussing. Hit the like button if you enjoyed this video, and subscribe if you want to see some more of these. Be sure to keep watching movies, and I'll see you again soon.
Lonesome, lonesome, I want her not to leave me, want her not to grieve me, never to deceive me. Daylight coming in the morning, hangman waiting on the stone, rope hanging from the gallows, pit waiting for my bones.